My sister Bailey just called me for the second time this week. Our relationship has been strained for almost a year, so I was fairly surprised by the first call and shocked by the second one. Our mother is usually the one to call me. Bailey sounded pretty off, and I kept asking her if everything was all right. I guess she was having problems with Mom and didn't want to talk about it over the phone. Bailey is my mother's favorite, her beautiful sunshine angel golden child. They live together and agree on almost everything, especially when it comes to my father, brother, and I. Ugh, I can't even type that without rolling my eyes. I guess I better provide some context. My father and mother divorced when I started high school. I went to live with my father after my mother, who has borderline personality disorder, emotionally abused me until I was basically dead inside. My brother Aaron and sister Bailey are twins and 4 years younger than me and lived with my mom even after I moved out. My brother is pretty messed up with drugs, but I think he's trying. Bailey could do no wrong, and my father eventually disowned her for being a smaller version of Mom. My father married another divorcee a few years later. My stepmom had two grown children. The youngest, Harry, currently has an adorable wife and an adorable toddler and an adorable dog. I'm pretty sure they live the American dream, if it still exists. The oldest, Audrey, is basically my best friend. We grew up in two dysfunctional families, and we are similar mentally and emotionally, but that is where the similarities end. Audrey says I'm built like an elf and admits she is basically a lesbian battle dwarf with a quick wit and plenty of creative curse words. Her meme game is unbeatable. Audrey is the one I call when things get rough with Bailey and my mom. Bailey and Audrey don't speak because Bailey is terrified of Audrey, and with good reason. Audrey has lived in more than a few bad neighborhoods in her adult life, and she's seen some crazy stuff, too much to go into here. Audrey doesn't scare easily, and Bailey is used to getting her way. Bailey threw a fit and threatened to call the cops on Audrey one day for smoking pot on the back deck and not sharing with a, then, 16-year-old Bailey. Audrey just stared at Bailey. Eventually, Bailey quieted down. I owe you an ass beating when you turn 18. Be ready, Audrey stated calmly, tapping out her small glass pipe. As far as I know, they haven't spoken since. Fast forward to this week when I got the calls from Bailey. I hadn't heard from my mom, and Bailey was basically asking me to come back home. I am at grad school, studying art education, and refused. I wasn't putting my life on hold again for the abusive sister and mother who made my childhood a living hell. It's gross how much I want them to love me sometimes, even now. Bailey kept assuring me that she needed me at home. I eventually faked a reason to get off the phone for each call. I immediately called Audrey after the second call. She listened and sympathized, but was as confused as I was about the calls. She replied with her normal, dark humor. Maybe she has someone tied up in the basement or something. Maybe she wants to tie you up in the basement. Maybe she's just doing her normal thing, and your mom isn't enough for her anymore. They have ruled Garbage Mountain together for long enough. They need a new trash princess. It's an all-you-can-eat kind of gig, if you don't mind eating shit all the time. I laughed. Audrey was right. Bailey and my mother were toxic, and visiting them was never a good idea. Heard anything from your bro lately? Audrey was asking about Aaron again. I hadn't heard anything from him in weeks, Not that it was unusual for him to disappear. He had a bad attitude and a love affair with anything that made him oblivious to the present. It was a wonder that he refused to sell his guitar and amp. Everything else of value was long gone. I guess playing the guitar paid for the drugs, and I didn't see that changing any time soon. I'm trying to focus on school and not think about him too hard. He always sucks me into his chaos, and that is not what I need while I'm in grad school. Fair enough. I hope he turns up soon. I know you worry, Haeli. Audrey got quiet. She never liked talking about addicts, and she never admitted to being worried about Aaron. She had watched too many friends die from overdoses and other complications from drugs. I didn't blame Audrey for emotionally distancing herself. We talked for a while longer. Audrey seemed a little distracted, but I assumed she was working on one of her weird programming projects or playing some first-person shooter. She was married to her electronics and couldn't live without the internet. We exchanged our normal I love yous, and I hopped into bed. I had to be up early to make up for the time on the phone with my sisters. The next few days were without incident. I went to class. I threw a few pots on my favorite wheel in the ceramics studio that Tuesday night. Time flew as I concentrated on my craft. Before I knew it, it was midnight. I decided to finish what I was working on and head back home. As I was finishing off the top rim of a giant bowl, my phone rang. The clay at the top folded into an asymmetrical mess. It was a blocked number. Ugh. As someone who has had the same phone number almost their entire life, I get these calls every once in a while. It's usually some person from high school or undergrad looking to Netflix and chill. What a waste of good clay. I let it go to voicemail. After about a minute, the phone beeped to let me know someone actually left a message. I was in no rush to hear some wasted dude tell me how much PBR it took to get up the courage to call me, so I concentrated on cleaning up my mess. I went home and passed out on my couch watching episodes of Firefly. I awoke at 8 a.m. to a knock on my door. "Can I help you?" I asked the two uniformed police officers standing at my door. It was too early in the morning to be doing this. "Can we talk inside?" one of them asked. I gave a small nod as I unlocked the chain and let them in. I could feel something wasn't right. I sat down as one of them started to speak. "We regret to inform you that your brother Aaron passed away sometime early Monday morning between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. Due to the unusual circumstances of his death, we're going to have to ask you a few questions. Has anything unusual happened in the last week? Have you had any contact with Aaron?" They had just found the body Monday morning after the construction crew had noticed their shed had been broken into and found the generator on the other side of the site, extension cord still attached. I didn't have much to tell the police officers. Aaron was squatting in an abandoned building. He had run a series of extension cords from the construction site next door to his amp and then dropped the amp and his guitar in the bathtub. The words, "Do you love me now?" were scrawled in black paint behind the bathtub. The paint was still wet, but they couldn't find the paint can or brush. He had his kit ready to go, but the syringe was still full of what he cooked up for round one, and a tiny baggie of white powder was still on the sink, waiting for round two. Knowing Aaron, he wouldn't succumb to suicide without first shooting his whole stash. Drugs and music were his two reasons for living. I wondered if he had a jealous girlfriend. The cops didn't seem to have any information about a romantic interest. Suddenly, the questions became too much. I asked the officers to leave, agreeing to come down to the station if they had any more questions. I all but pushed them out the door. I sat down in shock. I looked at my phone and remembered the voicemail. I guess now was as good a time as any. Distorted music played loudly. It stopped suddenly. I swear I heard Aaron say, "What are you doing here? Get the fuck out of my house!" There was a loud bang, followed by silence and static. I think I heard someone laughing as the voicemail ended. It was hard to tell. The whole message was garbled. It couldn't have been Aaron. He was already dead. I called the police immediately and turned over my phone. Just having it in the apartment seemed unclean in some intangible way. I knew I would get nothing done for school that day and no sleep that night. I emailed my advisor and professors, explaining that I would need to be gone for a few days while I dealt with Aaron's death. I Skyped Audrey. "What is happening, lil sis?" Audrey said loudly, only half looking at the screen. Her giant headphones and string of obscenities told me she was playing some shooter game. "What? Not you?" "It's my sister calling. My mother is a saint. Well, except for that one time, but hey, she was just holding the camera for your mom." I burst into tears. I just couldn't hold it in anymore. Audrey looked over and threw her headset and controller to the side. "I'm sorry, hun. Tell me everything." I tried my best to convey my feelings through a barrage of tears. "Stay put. Don't drive like this. I'm coming up there to pick you up. Who loves you, right? We're going to get through this together. I'm leaving right away, so I'll be there in 2 hours." She hung up immediately. I packed and waited. I turned on the TV but ended up staring at the door. I clutched a box of old family photos. I somehow fell asleep on the couch and awoke to Audrey pounding on the door. I hollered that I was okay and let her in. "Are you freaking serious? Where is your goddamn What in the flaming garbage heap of mankind is that shit on your wall? That's some major crazy right there." Every photo in the box was stuck to the wall, and every picture of Aaron's face was blacked out with paint. There were no tears. I felt like I had swallowed ice and glass. Wordlessly, we pulled down each photo and wiped off the black paint. It was still wet. "I'm sorry I'm almost an hour late. There was traffic coming out of the city. You ready to go?" I hadn't realized the time. Everything was starting to become a blur. I trudged down the stairs with my backpack, purse, and the shoebox of pictures. Audrey carried my bags. I slid into the passenger seat of her tracker. She opened the hatch, and I heard plastic rustling. "Is that a drop cloth?" I yelled back as Audrey fumbled to fold over the large plastic sheet. I noticed spots of dark paint on it. She shoved it quickly to the side and practically threw my bags in beside it. "Why do you have that?" "A buddy of mine needed to touch up some furniture, and I had extra paint and a drop cloth. She had good wine." "We made a date of it," Audrey said with a wink. "Come on, we're burning daylight. Let's get this show on the road. Wait, there's something you never explained. Where's your phone?" I explained the voicemail and the decision to turn over the phone. I guess I had forgotten, in all the craziness, to tell her that I was why I was using Skype. Audrey let me know she had an extra phone I could use. I guess she always kept a spare or 3. What can I say? She's obsessed with electronics. On our way back to my hometown, Audrey insisted I call the family and talk to them. She let me use her phone as a hotspot to check my emails on my laptop. I had called and emailed everyone but Bailey. Do you mind if I call Bailey on your phone? I know you two don't talk, and I don't want to start anything. Your brother commits suicide. You go nuts with some kind of death collage, and you're worried about me? Call her. Just use the app with the little black icon on the home screen. It will hide my number. Thanks, I said, but I didn't make the collage on my wall, and I don't think Aaron killed himself. I felt my cheeks get red as Audrey gave me one of her famous, worse-than-death stares. She sighed loudly and looked back at the road. Just make the call and we'll talk about this later, okay? Audrey seemed visibly agitated. Tell Bailey I said hi and that I still owe her one. I think I might have made a mistake going with Audrey. Guys, I snuck out to an all-night coffee shop to write this. There's more, but I'm not sure how often I can update this with Audrey watching me like a hawk. Maybe my father or stepmom might have some insight. Maybe there's something that Bailey needs to tell me. I just need to put this out here just in case I end up like Aaron. Wish me luck. I think I'm going to need it. Edit. I decided against staying with Audrey tonight and just arrived at my father's house. I'm exhausted after trying to help plan for the funeral. Audrey was very much against me staying here, and she insisted that I should be careful after the incident with the photos. Bailey didn't answer the phone last night when I called from the unknown number, but she picked up today. I was worried about her. I need some time to think, but I should be updating you all in a few hours. Thanks for the comments and messages. I didn't sleep well after my last post. I was able to sneak back in without incident after I finished up at the coffee shop. But Audrey seemed pretty distant and upset the next morning. I can't tell if she's mad at me or just dealing with Aaron's death. She's so closed off sometimes. Despite her bad mood, Audrey arranged to get the morning off from work and followed through on getting me a phone. She even paid to activate it, which was a relief. I have no income until I get back to school. After we left the phone store, we went to the police precinct that was handling my brother's case. I wanted to let the police know I was in town. They hadn't received my old phone yet. I guess I should have waited and brought the phone down here. I wanted to talk to them about the photos and the weirdness with Audrey, but she insisted on coming into the station with me. I didn't think about this at the time, but we destroyed evidence when we took down the pictures. I was just so shocked that I wasn't thinking straight. Audrey told me that if I wanted to have these photos for the funeral, I needed to wait until it was over to turn over the photos. She's right, but I question her motives. Audrey dropped me off at my father's house around 1 p.m. We had a meeting with the funeral home that was holding Aaron's funeral at 2 p.m. They hadn't released the body yet, but we wanted to get a jump on preparations. I called Bailey, but neither she nor my mother would come to the meeting, even though I hoped we could mend old wounds and plan the service as a family. Speaking of Mom, her phone is going straight to voicemail. Bailey told me that she was inconsolable and wouldn't leave the house. Mom apparently wants to mourn Aaron in her own way, and I guess she told Bailey that my father and I were probably part of the reason Aaron died. She believes that Aaron took his own life. I know this is just the normal terrible stuff my mom says, but Bailey didn't have to tell me. I was also informed that I was not permitted to visit the house and that they would call the police if I showed up on the premises. This is not even the first time I have been forbidden from visiting. I'm just going to concentrate on planning the service and making it the way Aaron would have wanted it. My father and stepmom took me to my favorite barbecue place in the city for an early dinner. I didn't think I was hungry, but I ate everything on my plate. They were quiet through dinner, I'd say, but my father ordered an extra round of beers and started asking me what I thought happened to Aaron. Do you think he did it? Or do you think someone killed him? I don't know for sure, but I think the police should be looking for a killer. Do you love me now? Is not something you say in a situation like that. He hadn't touched his stash. He ruined his guitar and amp. I don't think he would have done that. And then there's the weird thing that happened with our family photos in my apartment. What happened? Karen, my stepmom, looked almost furious. And why are you just bringing this up now? I don't wonder where Audrey's killer dirty looks come from. Karen and Audrey have almost identical expressions. I told her and my father about the photos, about the blacked-out face of my brother, about Audrey helping me to clean them, and lastly about the decision not to tell the police. I was embarrassed and crying by the end of the story. I'm so sorry, I should have called the police. I wasn't thinking clearly. Oh, buck up and stop crying, my father said sharply. I already have a batshit ex-wife and daughter. I need you to focus and get through this with a level head. You and I don't get the luxury of falling apart. Did I mention my father is a total dick? Well, he is. He's a software developer like Audrey, and they both have a harsh, logical way of dealing with tragedy. I have always been too emotional for them. Maybe that's why I wanted to be an art teacher. I noticed Karen had started crying too. I want to leave. We need to go to the police station now, and Hailey, you need to tell them everything. You can grab 5 pictures for the funeral, but we need to turn the rest over to the police. I know it's wrong not to give them all of the pictures, but the damage is already done. May I stay with you guys tonight? I don't want to make Audrey mad, but I don't think I can deal with her screaming at her Xbox tonight. I was only being half-truthful, but if I was going to tell the police everything, I didn't want to stay with the person that I suspected of killing my brother. They said I could stay, so we stopped at Audrey's house to grab my stuff. I had an extra key and let myself in. Audrey was working late to make up for the hours she had missed that day, so I just left her a note on the fridge that I was staying at Dad and Karen's house that night. I picked my 5 favorite photos from the old shoebox and stashed them in my backpack. I turned off my phone and left it in my backpack as well. I didn't want to be interrupted, and I thought I might lose my nerve if Audrey called or texted me. I told Karen and Dad that I would catch an Uber and told them to go home. I know this is probably obvious, but the police were furious. I handed over the box as a detective on the case assaulted me with a barrage of questions. I answered as honestly as I could. After he was done asking me about who had access to my apartment, anyone who knew the combination to the lock on my storage unit in the apartment complex, where I kept a spare. When did the break-in occur? While I was asleep in full view of the front door. And how do I think someone got my key and entered my apartment without my knowledge? No idea, because I'm usually a light sleeper. I explained that I was suspicious of my stepsister Audrey. I spent a long time convincing the detective, but I put together a list of bullet points to save me from typing it all out. Audrey was asking about Aaron less than a week before his death. She doesn't ask about him because she can't handle addicts. Audrey had a drop cloth and dark paint in her tracker. I didn't see if it was actually black, but it was close enough. She could have painted the message. Audrey was great with tech, and I thought she could have sent me the voicemail. Audrey was with me when I discovered the photos on the wall. She was also supposedly an hour late picking me up. An hour would have given her plenty of time to set up that sick display. She was also the one to advise me not to go to the police with the pictures. She told me to tell Bailey she owed her one. Audrey was insensitive at times, but she seemed genuinely threatening when she mentioned it in the car. Lastly, I love Audrey more than anything, but she can be really scary at times. She has problems with anger. When Audrey gets mad, she will let the rage burn slowly until she gets even. Once you cross her, there's not always a way back to her good side. The detective seemed skeptical, but he took down what I had to say. I gave him my landlord's phone number so that they could get a key and search my apartment for clues. I hoped they found something that helped find Aaron's murderer. It seemed like the police were treating it as a murder at this point, which was good. I checked my phone as I waited for my Uber. I had 3 voicemails and a ton of texts. 2 voicemails were from Audrey, one full of angry yelling because I didn't call to let her know I wasn't staying, and one full of apologies for yelling at me over voicemail. The third voicemail was from Bailey. She was yelling at me too about how I was handling everything and how it was all my fault that our family was so broken. I only listened to the first 15 seconds before deleting it. It was a classic Bailey move, and I was having none of it. The texts were mostly condolences from friends and colleagues. I had one from Dad asking if I was done at the police station. I had a few from Audrey that were apologies. She was begging me to call her so she could apologize again. Not gonna happen, sis. I put the phone away as my Uber drove up. I didn't want to think about anything, and thankfully the driver didn't want to talk. When I got back to Dad's, I noticed the lights were off already. I shot him a quick text before I turned my phone off again. I wanted to let him know I was safely back in the neighborhood, but I was going to walk to the bar and have a drink or 10 to calm my nerves. I couldn't see straight by the time I got back to the house. I was as quiet as I could be, given the circumstances. I think I saw Karen in the kitchen, and she must have been pissed that I was so drunk because she turned around and almost ran to the back hallway. "Night, Karen," I slurred. I headed to the guest room and flopped on the bed. I passed out almost immediately. I woke up to the sound of the smoke alarm. My head was pounding, and I think I needed to vomit. I opened the guest room door to a haze of smoke in the kitchen. "Guys, I'm turning off the stove. Breakfast is burning." I shut off the stove and stumbled into the bathroom. Yep, definitely needed to get rid of my stomach contents. The smoke alarm was still going off. "Can someone take care of that?" I yelled from the bathroom. Why weren't they answering me? I was far too hungover to deal with the loud beeping. I opened the door and yelled again. Nothing. The smoke alarm eventually stopping screaming as I was finishing up. I stumbled back to the kitchen and grabbed some bread for toast. I cleaned up the kitchen while I waited for my toast. I had scraped the burnt eggs and sausage out of the pan, but the toaster popped before I could clean the French press on the counter. It was better that way. I hate coffee. I took a few bites of dry toast as I grabbed a large glass of orange juice from the fridge. I could hear the television in the living room and figured I would finish my toast and OJ while I watched the morning news. As I rounded the corner to enter the room, I stopped. I saw Karen's foot poking out from behind the coffee table. "Karen?" I screamed. My juice glass shattered on the floor as I started running towards her. My heart was pounding in my chest. "Dad, come quick! Something is wrong with Karen!" She was pale and covered in bloody vomit. No pulse. I started back to the guest room to grab my phone and stopped. There was my father. He was slumped over the arm of the couch. Whatever happened to Karen had clearly happened to him. Pale skin, blood, no pulse. I had to will my body to move. My legs jerked into motion, and I somehow made it to the guest room. My phone was still off from the night before. It seemed to take forever to turn on. I noticed one of the photos that I had taken from my photo box was on the nightstand. It was my favorite photo from Dad's wedding. Everyone but my stepbrother Harry was in it. Aaron, Dad, and Karen had been blacked out. I turned over the photo almost on instinct. "Do you love me now?" I was numb inside. I called 911. My voice sounded strange and far away. I recited the address and sat on the bed, hugging my knees. I told the dispatcher that I was going to unlock the back door. I couldn't handle walking through the living room again. I clutched the photo that was on my nightstand and walked out back, unlocking the back door and gate to the alley. I sat on the patio and stared at the picture that had been left on the nightstand. I looked at the three smiling faces, Audrey, Bailey, and me. "I'm going to hang up now. The back gate is unlocked," the dispatcher protested, but I didn't care. I was devastated. "Why would you do this to us, Audrey? Dude, you killed your own mom." Tears smeared the paint on the photo, but I didn't care. I thought I heard the gate move a little, and I looked up to see it move quickly back into place. I sprinted towards the alley just in time to see Audrey's car peel out and disappear. I stared at the tire tracks. The cops would be here any minute. I cursed myself for hanging up on the dispatcher. The cops finally showed up. I had to call my stepbrother Harry and tell him what happened. I told him to stay away until the police could find his sister. God forbid anything should happen to his beautiful family. I'll update you guys again tomorrow. It sounds like the police are certain that Aaron was murdered. I'm about to get pulled into the detective's office to tell my side of things. They're telling me that Audrey is a person of interest at this point. I've already made sure Bailey was okay. I guess her and my mom are going to stay at some motel out of town. I made her promise not to tell anyone where she's going, not even me. If there's any chance you're reading this, Audrey, I'll do whatever you want. I just don't want anyone else to get hurt. You know how to reach me. I wish the police would find Audrey already. Bailey and Mom won't pick up their phones. Harry is taking my advice for the next few days, but he insists on flying in sometime next week to help plan his mother's funeral. His extended family is helping plan the service, but mine seems to disappear every time there is a tragedy. They'll be there for the reading of the will, I'm sure, but they want nothing to do with planning either service. Dad wasn't super popular in the family, and Aaron had burned too many bridges to expect a fair turnout. My Uncle Mark put me up in a hotel for a few days and gave me money to rent a car. He is the only person that knows where to find me besides the police. I think it's better this way, but I have handled this entire situation miserably. I may be just as responsible for these deaths as Audrey. I know that's not actually true, but I feel responsible on some level. I've made stupid mistakes every step of the way. Speaking of the police, they said the killer had spiked Dad and Karen's coffee with rat poison, and agree that I'm in the center of this. Why else would the killer poison the one breakfast staple I will never use? The coffee must have been poisoned in the middle of the night, and they think it was Audrey, not my stepmom, that I saw in the kitchen when I came home wasted. It makes sense, and I feel so guilty for staying with Dad. If I hadn't elected to stay at their house that night, would my dad and Karen still be alive? I turned in the blacked-out photo immediately. The cops said that it appeared to be the same black paint from the last two incidents. The police said it was a very common home interior black latex paint, and I thought back to the paint cans in Audrey's tracker. When the department started seriously investigating Aaron, they stumbled on a whole heap of facts that didn't add up with the circumstances of his death. Aaron wasn't squatting. He was living with a girlfriend outside of the city and had cleaned up his act. The girlfriend said that Aaron wanted to prove he could be sober a few months before interacting with family again. She said the dysfunction in our family was a trigger. He had made several calls to Audrey in the couple weeks leading up to his death. The girlfriend said Aaron had run into Audrey at an NA meeting. I never knew she was an addict, but it explains a lot about Audrey's past. Maybe she had caught him about to relapse and had put an end to the cycle. Maybe she wasn't an addict at all, and she had used NA to lure Aaron to his death. The girlfriend said he was supposed to have a gig at a studio that didn't actually exist, according to the detective. The police aren't sure if Aaron had lied to his girlfriend so he could go use, or if Aaron was tricked into showing up at an abandoned building. His blood was positive for some animal tranquilizer, but the only fresh needle mark was on his neck. The police thought he might have been dead before the electrocution. There was no heroin in his system. As devastated as I was losing my brother, I was relieved that he didn't take his own life. I saw my family's story on the news. They were showing an old mugshot of Audrey, as she was a person of interest in the case. I didn't know that Audrey had ever been arrested. I was starting to accept that there was a lot I didn't know about Audrey. As the night went on, I got restless. I couldn't reach Bailey, and I think my best friend and stepsister is a killer. Against my better judgment, I decided to go to Mom's house to see if they had left any clues as to their location. At the very least, it would get me out of the hotel. I felt like the walls were starting to close in. The doors were locked at Mom's house, and my key didn't work anymore. This was not surprising. Mom changed the locks pretty frequently throughout my childhood. The garage code was changed as well, and Bailey's car was gone. No problem. Aaron broke the window lock in his childhood bedroom years ago, and, fearing her wrath, never told my mom. I jumped the backyard fence and let myself in. A thick layer of dust covered Aaron's bed and shelves. It looked like the room hadn't been touched since Mom kicked Aaron out. As I walked down the hall, the house seemed extra musty, and I smelled something weird, like laundry detergent had been poured on spoiled meat. I didn't want to turn on any lights just in case Audrey was watching the house. I grabbed the emergency flashlight Mom kept in the kitchen and headed to Mom's room. The smell kept getting worse. I jumped as a soft whoosh broke the silence and swung the flashlight wildly as I tried to see what was making the noise. It was just an automatic air freshener. I laughed nervously and sighed. "Buck up, Buttercup." I laughed again. That was my father's favorite advice for life's problems. I hated it when he was alive. But the nostalgia bolstered my confidence as I opened the door to my mother's room. The smell intensified immediately as I swept the flashlight over the floor. It was covered in jugs of desiccant. Who needs this much silica gel? I wondered as I slowly directed the flashlight to the bed. A clear plastic tarp covered what I assumed was the rotting corpse of my mother, covered in beads of silica gel. I struggled to remember the last time I had spoken to her. I struggled to keep my composure. I forced myself not to run. I looked around the room. There was an envelope marked Bailey on the nightstand. I opened it and discovered my mother's letter to her golden child. It was not what I expected. My mother was a cruel woman, but I never knew it extended to Bailey. In the note, she had outlined all the reasons that she couldn't stand Bailey. Mom blamed Bailey for the divorce, for pushing away her other children, for their financial situation, for Mom's need to suck the life out of every human she encountered. The note demanded Bailey leave if she couldn't generate more money. Mom said she was too broken over Bailey's failures to work. She said that if Bailey had been a better daughter, they wouldn't be stuck alone together. That my mother knew that Bailey would fail in life if not for her magnanimity. That my mother had very little use for her addict son, and I was the child Mom should have favored all along. She blamed Bailey for manipulating her into not loving me. Mom was famous for leaving nasty letters for us. I remembered some of the nastier notes left for me as a child, and how she used to shame us into not showing them to other adults. Go ahead and show them what a bad daughter you've been. After they read that letter, do you think they're still going to love you? I wish I had known. None of my mother's actions were Bailey's fault. Bailey had shown nothing but loyalty to my mother, and my mother blamed her for everything. It wasn't a goodbye letter. It was an ultimatum. Be better or be gone. I realized why Bailey had been calling me. I scanned the walls of the bedroom. They were covered in hundreds of letters from Bailey to my mother. She outlined every sin my mother had committed. Every insult Mom had made behind closed doors was here in print. Sometimes she apologized for killing my mother. Sometimes she celebrated Mom's death. Every letter ended with the same question. Do you love me now? I realized that Bailey had been abused too, that being the golden child meant a lifetime of appearing perfect on the surface while facing Mom's wrath when no one else was looking. It didn't excuse Bailey's behavior, but it did put it in context. I knew Bailey had been killing members of our family all along. I heard the garage's door. Bailey had come home. I hoped she hadn't gotten to Audrey. I grabbed my phone. Why did I insist on turning the phone off instead of putting it on silent like a normal person? My desire to mourn in peace was seriously impacting my ability to survive this ordeal. I made a promise to myself that I would never turn it off again if I got out of this. Bailey wouldn't know that the rental car was mine unless she had been following me. I made my way to the closet as quietly as possible and clicked off the flashlight as I closed the closet door. Mom's bedroom was at the end of the hallway connected to the kitchen. The door from the garage was in the kitchen. I was stuck here for now. Hello, Mother. I'm Umi. Bailey's sing-song entrance prickled my skin. I hope you didn't go running off while I was gone. I would just die if you left me. She cackled at her own terrible joke. The door to the bedroom opened and the light flicked on. I held my breath and looked through the slats in the closet door, hoping Bailey would just leave. "Mom, where's my letter?" I suddenly realized I was still holding the letter addressed to Bailey. There was no way I was getting out of this. If my life was a horror movie, I would have been the large-breasted blonde who died in the first scene. Bailey sighed. Did it fall under the bed again? You know I like to keep it on the nightstand. It helps me remember why I needed you to go away for good. You've sucked the life out of all of us, and, like a dog with poor temperament, you needed to be put down. I shoved the letter through the door of the closet as Bailey continued to monologue and look under the bed. I slid slowly backwards in the closet so she wouldn't see me when she finally found the letter. "Where the hell is the letter, Mom?" Think, 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 Bailey, where would it be?" She tripped backwards over an empty jug and bumped into the closet. I jerked suddenly, toppling a few storage boxes. I hoped Bailey would think she caused the collapse. I held my breath. In a moment of clarity, I shoved my phone into my sports bra. If I was going to get caught, I could at least keep my phone. Bailey looked down. "Here it is, Mom. I knew you wouldn't throw away such an important part of our relationship." She put the letter back in the nightstand. I wonder what Haley would say if she were here. In fact, let's ask her. The closet door flew open, leaving me no time to react. I tried to use the flashlight as a weapon, but Bailey grabbed my hair, pulling my head to the side. Bailey yanked the flashlight out of my hand. As I looked up at her, the flashlight came crashing down on my face. I tried to stand, but Bailey brought the flashlight down again, and the world went black.